What a beautiful evening it is. It's such a nice pleasure to be out. And I'm out this evening to hopefully capture one image. I've got an image in mind and I want to capture it nearer or during golden hour or sunset, and I'm hoping to get some nice colour in the sky. There's certainly a chance of that this evening, but as we all know, that could change. But what I want to talk about in this video, and it's inspired by the shoot that I'm out to do tonight, is to go over what I would call my landscape photographer's checklist. This is a series of checks that I go through before most of my landscape photography shoots. So these are shoots where I know I'm going out with all my gear and a tripod and I've got a bit of time. There's a series of checks that I always go through. So there's a few that I will go through at home, and then there's quite a lot that I'll go through on location. So the ones at home begin typically the day before, if possible for me, and it's just a case of ensuring that I've got everything ready and in the best condition that it can be to help save time and save any issues or forgetting things when I'm actually on location. So the checks that I go through home are, obviously it'll ensure that in my camera bag I've got my camera and the selection of lenses that I want to bring with me, and also my selection of filters. I will also ensure that my lenses and filters are clean. So this can save a lot of time or potential heartaches on location. There's nothing worse than taking a few shots in light that won't come back, only to find there's maybe some smears on your lens or anything like that. So I always like to do those checks. And I also take with me some cleaning cloths, perhaps some cleaning fluid or lens wipes, because they could obviously get some mess on them on location, or it could begin raining or whatever. So we need to be able to clean our equipment on location as well. But cleaning some of it at home definitely saves some time. Next are batteries. I always make sure that I've got at least 2 batteries with me and that they're fully charged. So I don't want to be running out of power and have to end a shoot early once I'm out on location, or arrive on location and find out my batteries have got no power in them. That would be a disaster. The next important thing for me are memory cards. So my camera has got dual memory card slots, so I always put 2 in the camera before it goes into my camera bag, and then I'll carry another 4 spare memory cards as well, and that will cover me for any shoots that I've got. What I also like to do is that before I get all my memory cards into my camera bag, I'll go through them and ensure that any photographs on them from a previous shoot are safely backed up onto my computer, so I'm not going to lose them. If you come out on location and find your memory cards are full and you either can't take any pictures on a stunning evening, or you're going to have to delete some shots you've taken in a previous shoot just to capture some more today, that really is a disaster. So I like to back up everything that's on my memory cards, and then ideally I'll have my memory cards wiped and ready to go for the next shoot, such as the one that I'm doing this evening. I also like to make sure that my tripod is near my camera bag, so I'm not going to forget my tripod. And I always ensure I've got either an L bracket on my camera or a quick release plate for my tripod. It would be a disaster not to have those things obviously as well. So that covers the base equipment checks that I do at home. Those are my essential items. I obviously carry much more than that. I'm not going to talk about clothing and food and refreshments and so on, but those are the core camera and photography equipment checks that I do before I leave home, ideally the night before or the day before a shoot. But now I'm going to head off to my planned location for tonight, and then I'll go through all the checks that I actually do on location as well before I ever press the shutter button. So I've arrived at the spot, the location I want to be in for this evening, and the first check that I'm doing here is to establish the exact position that I want to take my shot from this evening. So I'm getting the composition established, working out where I need to be without the tripod, and I've found the spot that I want to be in, which I think is going to be here. So the next stage is to get my tripod set up. So I'm now going to get the tripod into the position I think it needs to be in for this shot. And I'm not going to securely fix it into this spot at the moment. I've got some spikes in my tripod, but I'm getting it fairly secure here. Not totally secure yet, just in case I need to move it. I've checked that all the leg locks on my tripod are really secure as well. You don't want anything being slightly loose and moving over the duration that you're in this spot. Since I'm on the tripod, I want to ensure that lens stabilization and also in body image stabilization is off. So I can turn that off on the switch on the side of my lens here. So that's turned off. I can see I'm going to need to raise the center column. So I'll do that here, turn that up a bit. And the next thing I want to check obviously is my composition. So I'm going to loosen the ball head a little bit and see how the shot is looking. Just get the composition fine-tuned, and that is looking pretty good there. So I'm going to secure up the ball head. It's important to check that all areas of your tripod head are secure. So I've got the ball head secure, I've got a pan control on the other side, that is secure, and also the attachment where the quick release plate attaches to the tripod, that dial is secure there as well. So everything is looking good, the tripod is solid. I'm going to double check that the composition is still looking good, and it is. It's framed up nicely. So in terms of composition, there's a couple of other things that I would check here. First of all, I'll look around the edges of my frame and ensure there's nothing protruding in that I don't want to be there, such as a tree branch. So I'll just double check that, and no, that is looking fine in this case. There's no need to worry about that. The other thing I'll do here at this stage is ensure that my camera is level. Now I'm using the inbuilt level in my camera to do that. 99% of the time you're going to want your camera level. I can think of maybe a few unique circumstances where you don't want it to be level. Maybe you're going for a certain effect, or maybe the lay of the land just doesn't look right when your camera's level, so you may want to tweak it. But it's very important just to check that and do a final check on your composition. Just make sure you're really happy with it. If you're using leading lines or anything, just make sure that they're all going to the spots that you want in terms of your position. If it doesn't look right, you're going to have to realign yourself. But at this stage, that is the tripod secure. We've got the composition framed up. I've turned off all forms of stabilization, and I'm ready to start having a look at some more camera settings now. Okay, the next set of checks that I want to do are in terms of my camera settings, and specifically start off with the exposure triangle. So I want to get my ISO, aperture and shutter speed set for this scene. So I'm going to ensure my camera's at the lowest ISO possible. So it's at 160. It's always worth checking that, because if you've been shooting something the last time you were out which demanded a higher ISO, you need to check that and get it back down as low as possible, just to ensure optimal image quality. Then I need to have a look at the scene and think, what aperture do I need? Well, I want the whole scene in focus here. So considering I'm on the telephoto lens and how far away I'm going to be focusing, I think f8 will be a nice aperture for that. So I'm going to dial that in just now. Then I'm going to consider my shutter speed. And I'm looking at the camera's light meter and the histogram in order to do this. So I'm just going to balance the exposure. And at the moment, to get that right, it is saying 1/250th of a second. So I know for this scene in a very calm night on my tripod, that is absolutely perfect. If I was shooting in extremely strong winds or at the coast with strong waves coming in, I'm trying to freeze them in motion, anything like that will make me reconsider what shutter speed I need to use. I'll think through it, take a few test shots and check that. But that's the important base settings established at the moment. The next thing I want to do is think about focusing. Where do I need to focus? and I want to take a test shot to check that I've got everything in focus that I want to. So I'm just in autofocus. I know or think that if I focus on these trees off in the distance, pretty much in the center of the image, everything should be sharp. So that is focus established. I'm now going to take a test shot and just check that that will indeed get everything sharp. So what I will do now at this stage is check that I'm in the 2-second timer mode, because I don't want to just press the shutter button and it instantly takes my shot and perhaps get a chance of camera shake. So I'm going to use the 2-second timer. My tripod is very steady and that will be sufficient. Another thing I'll often do is use my shutter release cable, but today I'm happy to use the 2-second timer. So we're going to take a test shot and then we're going to check that. And what I'm checking for here is a double check of the exposure, but I'm not taking my final image at the moment, so I'll need to revise my exposure triangle later on. It's purely the focus I'm checking at this moment. So I'll press the playback button. I'm going to zoom into 100%. I'm checking the furthest off trees in the distance, and I'm checking the nearest part of the field to the camera. And then I'm just going to have a look at the sort of mid ground as well, and everything looks really nice and sharp. So as I suspected, f8 is the best aperture, I think, for this scene. I'm a little bit concerned about going lower, and I know from experience shooting on this combination, f8's really nice and sharp, so I'm happy with that. If things dramatically change now shooting in really low light conditions, I may use a slightly more open aperture, but I'm really happy with the setup at the moment. So obviously I'm shooting in manual mode, and the main reason for that is that I don't want anything to change in terms of my camera settings unless I actually change them myself. I'm also using back button focus, so when I press the shutter button, all that will happen is that the camera will take my photograph. It's not going to try and refocus on the scene in front of me here. If you don't have that set up or you don't like it, now might be a good time to switch to manual focusing mode, be that done on your lens or on the camera itself. That will ensure that now that we've checked our focus and we know everything we want to be sharp is sharp, there's no chance of that going wrong in the future. So with that all set, there's a few other things on the camera that I like to just check and double check at this point. Typically these settings won't really change for me personally from shoot to shoot, but if you are someone that's changing some of these settings, it's always wise to check them before you start taking your photographs. So as I spoke about earlier, my camera has got dual memory card slots, and I can see very easily just by looking at the back of my LCD here that it's set to save my images to both card slots, and that's what I want. So I've got that peace of mind, that backup. The other thing that I want to do is check that I'm saving my images in RAW format. Now I advise shooting in RAW format. If you don't, then that's obviously up to yourself. You'll be using JPEG, but make sure your camera is saving your images in the format you want. You could be shooting in RAW like me, you could be shooting in JPEG or RAW and JPEG, but just make sure your camera is saving files in the actual format you want. The next thing I'll just double check is white balance. Now typically I'll shoot in auto white balance, and I've found that across all my cameras that's worked really well, probably in excess of 99% of the time. And because I'm shooting in RAW, I can always change that in post-processing. But if you're someone that's shooting in JPEG, it's very important to get that setting right. So if you're happy with your auto white balance, leave it like that. But if not, pick something appropriate. When it's brighter today, I would probably pick daylight in a situation such as this. Another thing that's important to consider at this stage before we actually begin taking images is that if you're shooting in JPEG or RAW and JPEG, make sure you've got the correct camera picture profile set up. So perhaps on the Fuji you like a Terna or Provia, whatever it is, but just make sure that you've got that set. So when the camera is saving your JPEGs, they're going to end up looking the way you want. Also, you can tweak some of the JPEG settings at this stage to make sure they're the way you want. And that's pretty much it for the camera settings. The final thing I'll do before I take any shots is that even though I've cleaned my lenses at home, I will just go around and check the front of my lens and just make sure everything looks good there. And then I'm pretty much ready to go and start shooting. So that's it for my landscape photographer's checklist that I go through in every shoot. There's quite a lot I've covered there, but it really does become second nature, and it obviously takes a lot longer to record a video about settings than just check them yourself. So it really is a quick procedure, but it's one that I feel is very, very important. It could save potential disasters, and it's going to help you hopefully go home with the best set of images that you can do. Obviously I'll revise any of my settings such as shutter speed and so on throughout the shoot if I need to, but that's me very confident now that I'm going to be capturing my images as best as I can tonight. So I hope you found it useful. If you do, a like rating on the video would be very much appreciated, and if you're new to my channel and enjoyed the content, please subscribe for more. But for now, as always, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video.